And I've met people with 25 crores and they're still not satisfied. We as humans are not really wired to think in exponential terms. We can only think in straight line terms. Most people focus on trying to get above average returns, but they don't look at the time factor. You made money in real estate not because the returns are good. You made money in real estate because your investment period has been very long. Most people problem क्या होता है कि वो बोलते हैं मंथ खत्म हो गया, पैसा बचा नहीं. तुम पता नहीं 10-10 करोड़ का बात कर रहे हो, यहाँ पे पैसा नहीं बचा. Income minus expenses is equal to savings. So how much money to invest and for how long? Those are the two questions you need to figure out. Black swan event happens. That's when you are able to use that money and buy for cheap. And that's really what asset allocation, that's the path. And that's what's important as investors that you must. We've been taught growing up not to talk about religion and money.
Good afternoon or good evening, folks, depending on which part of the country you are. So if you are in Bombay, I think it's already 7. It looks like it's 4. I mean, your clock will say it's 4. पर आप बाहर अगर मौसम देखोगे तो 7 ही बज गए हैं. It's raining, it's drizzling, it's going at whatever pace it wants to go. And you're just wondering whether to move out of the house or not. So with that, we'll start today's conversation with Mr. Gautam Kalia, a super investor. He works at a very senior position, head of sales at Sher Khan. And while my interactions with Gautam sir has been, very good in terms of a person from such a diverse background, a person who has done everything in the financial services space, and somebody who understands this industry inside out. And he was the one who first told me that, look, 10 crores looks easy, but still there are some challenges that people face and they're not able to get to it. With that, what we've in our earlier videos, if you've seen, we've spoken on SIP, we've spoken on power of compounding, we've spoken on mutual funds, we've spoken on all different things. But I think today's guest really, is different when it comes to content for today. I mean, in terms of trying to understand the psychology behind an investor. Why does the 10 crore mark doesn't hit? Why does a person don't achieve their financial freedom in a given space and time? So with that, Gautam sir, I'll just hand it over to you, and if I'll let you, take the first place in terms of just talk to us about this concept of super investor and destination 10 crores that we are here today for.
Thanks, Jinay. So, hi everyone. I am a Senior Vice President and Head of Super Investor at Sher Khan by BNP Paribas. And I've been here now for the last 7 years, managing money for clients who have money of upwards of 10 lakhs with us. And obviously, I've spent about 20 years plus, as Jinay explained, managing money for different clients in India as well as the Middle East, either directly or through a team. And it took me some time, but finally, it's important to put all the learnings I have from all the meetings I've done. I've done probably 7,000 plus client meetings with different clients. Of all the meetings, of all the life stories I've heard, of all the ambitions that different people have at different stages of their lives. And, I've met people who got 70 lakh rupees total life savings and they're extremely happy. I've met people with 20-25 crores and they're still not satisfied. So, you see all sorts of personalities, all sorts of journeys. So I thought it was important for me to kind of address the elephant in the room. And what I see is this whole generation of people who started to work, who started to earn, and they are not really sure of what's the best way forward. They are inundated with a lot of information. So when you have a lot of information, then you have no information, essentially. So I'm here adding to that inundation of information by providing you more. But hopefully this is the stuff that you will listen to, and this is something that you'll be able to practice and follow. So that's the effort. That's really why I'm here, to kind of help people understand that you can reach 10 crores of wealth. Is just you have to stop being your own worst enemy and prevent yourself from creating harm in your own portfolio and reaching that place. So it is possible. It's just about knowing what to do, what's the journey, having a better understanding of the steps you need to take.
I agree. What I want to understand is, first of all, why 10 crores? Okay.
Yeah.
Why not some other number?
Fantastic question. So, when I started working on this, I thought, okay, we should call it the wealth creator mindset, because really it's about the right mindset. But that doesn't get people listening. So I said, the first question is, let's try to define what rich is in most people's mind. I could have made it one crore or 5 crore, 10 crores, or even 10 lakhs. But I said 10 crores is something that will appeal to everyone. It's aspirational. Everyone will more or less agree with me that, okay, it's, if it's not super rich, at least it's rich enough. Some people may say that, oh, it's too much. We are happy with 2-3 crores also. So I said, let me go with the number 10 crores. Let's get that problem solved first. Because once you get that out of the way, that okay, I need to reach 10 crores, then you kind of can focus on the core of the message. And the core of the message, if you follow, then you can reach 100 crores also, actually. Or if you follow it and you're targeting 5 crores, you'll probably reach there faster. It's just about defining what rich is. So I thought 10 crores is probably a number that people will, I would say most people will uniformly agree कि ठीक है 10 crore तो is a good number. Let's try and target.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about 10 crores, a person with a savings of 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, आप उसको जब भी 10 crore के बारे में बात करते हो, I mean, it's not possible. I mean, it's unbelievable for him at the first. And then how do you make it possible for him?
See, essentially it is, मतलब 100 बातों की एक बात, it is really compounding, right? We as humans are not really wired to think in exponential terms. We can only think in straight line terms. And that's really what we have to keep telling ourselves, that compounding will help you get there. So by compounding, you really need to understand that it's not a 10-year journey. Making that money is easily a 20-year plus journey. More often than not, it is 30 to 40 years, right? So when you start off working at the age of 20, 25, unless you're a doctor and you start off later, but typically when you start working at the age of 23, 24, you'll probably work for another 20 to 30 years. And during that working period is when you need to focus, think about investing over a 30-year period. And that journey really is what people need to take into account at the start. So even if you're starting at 40, you need to keep in mind that you probably want to reach this wealth number, even if it's not 10 or 5, you want to reach this by 60 or 65. So again, it's a 20-25-year journey. If you are in your 60s, you have an aspiration of living beyond your 80s or 90s, and you want to leave a large legacy for your next of kin. So there also it kind of makes sense to view this. So the principles apply at all stages of life. And regardless of your stage of life, it is a 20 to 30 year plus journey. And the minute you contextualize the problem that way, then you understand what are your priorities. Then you're able to reprioritize your parameters that you have to look at. That's when you can start looking at, okay, can I be happy with average returns over an above average period of time? So that is one of the key problems, that most people focus on trying to get above average returns, but they don't look at the time factor. And time really is the entire game when it comes to this. And that's, if you understand, we've learned simple interest and compound interest, all of us in 7th and 8th standard. And it's that everything is multiplicative except for time, number of periods, which is exponential. And the minute we are able to wrap our head around that, then we understand, okay, it's not a 10, 15-year journey. It will take me 20 to 30 years. So minute you tell yourself, you kind of ease the burden off your shoulders, saying, okay, 30 saal lagega, 30 saal ke liye ye plan hai. So you make a plan for 30 years, and then you can do everything else as far as excitement and other things is concerned, which is what we end up doing on our core portfolio. And that's really the learning.
I think it's one thing out of it was very interesting, and it links to my next question, which has come to our community. So when you talk about average returns for a very long period of time, so Aniket is asking, sir, if you think real estate plays an important role in reaching a 10 crore mark. I think that's average return. So talk us through about it.
Okay, so it's a question that begs other questions. So let me see if I can share my screen.
Yeah, yes, you can.
Yeah, can you see this Excel?
Yeah. Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So if you, whatever asset class you invest, whether it is fixed deposit, whether it is gold, whether it is real estate, whether it is the stock market, equities. So whatever asset class you invest in, finally you're going to get some return. And if you just look at it purely mathematically, forget about the emotional, the social cost or the social benefit of, let's say, buying real estate, where you're able to tell people that you've got this property or this piece of land there. Forget about that. Let's just look at it from a mathematical perspective first. If that real estate is giving you 8% return, right? and you bought it in one shot. You're not really making any payments there. You bought it, let's say you've spent 50 lakhs, right? So after 20 years, that 50 lakhs will become nearly 2.5 crores, right? Now, this is if that real estate has grown by 8% a year. If you're lucky and that real estate has grown by 12% a year, it's become 5.4 crores. But the key point is 20 years, right? Now, instead of 20 years, if you change this to 25, then great, you're at 10 crores. So this 12% asset, whatever you're investing in, you have to hold on to that, or it has to deliver 12% a year for that 25-year period. Now, if you look at all asset classes and their historic performance, you will find that real estate typically gives about 6 to 8% a return in India. And these are published figures. So obviously, these are not taking into account, those exceptional deals that all of us know about, which someone's relative bought some piece of land somewhere and 30 years later it is, worth crores. And there also, if you do the CAGR calculation, if you just calculate this return there, CAGR, then you'll find out it's typically 8 to 10%. Maybe if they are super lucky, it's become 11 or 12%. But real estate typically is given 6 to 8%. Gold has given 7 to 8%, even despite last 3 years rally. Equity, fixed deposit, which is debt, has again given anywhere between 6 to 8% gross, because you have to pay tax on all these. And obviously, equity has given about 15 to 16%. Now, equity is the one that gives you the highest return. So now if you get, let's say, 15% return and you put in 50 lakhs, then you're looking at something like 20 crores, right? So you need to first understand the long-term returns of different asset classes, and then you can apply, let's say, some sort of luck, saying that, okay, I'm smart. I have figured out one real estate deal which will give me above average returns for XYZ reasons. And that's why I'm getting into it, right? And maybe your thesis is right and you are lucky, so you actually make that return as well. So then you won't take 25 years, you'll probably take 20 years, right? So you'll save a little bit in time and you'll get there a little bit faster if you're right. If you're wrong, you'll take a little bit longer. So the view that I share and that I have is that there is no right answer. Everyone has their own journey. All investments are good investments. It's only about understanding the opportunity cost. Any money you're putting in real estate is money you're not putting in equity, is money you're not putting in fixed deposit. So if you're not putting money in equity and equity market is giving 25% a year return, you're missing out on that. You're getting the benefit of the investment you chose. You're getting the risks and the returns associated with that asset class, but you're missing out on the other things. And if you're able to take care of that FOMO, which is what happens with most of us, then you're still on the right path, which is what most people are not able to do. That you start off saying, okay, let me just buy let me buy an apartment because that's what seems to be working. But you don't have a understanding of whether that apartment will give you that even 8% return a year. And most apartments, let's say in Bombay, I've not seen deliver that kind of return. I've only seen the builders make return. So you're probably better off buying the share of the builder, the stock of the builder, because that stock has given much higher return. He's making the money by selling it to you. So there are these different things that you need to look at, which a lot of people don't, and they're not even aware of. And that's really the challenge. If you're aware of it and you say, boss, mujhe equity nahi karna, mujhe real estate is my first love, and real estate is like beti and equity is like bahu, right? So if real estate is my first love and that's what I'm going to do, then great. But then you know that this is the kind of return you should expect, and that's how you plan. And that's something I see missing half the time. In fact, with most people who have a portfolio, who are, let's say, 10, 15 years into their money making and investing journey, most of them don't even know where their money is, like in what is their asset allocation. So sometimes the gap I find between what we want them to be, or what we want you as investors to be like, and where you are, that gap is big.
Easier to hold is what people
Yeah,
tell.
absolutely. That's a fantastic point, that it kind of forces you, because of the illiquid nature and the fact that, there is this price discovery. And it's not like you have a ticker on TV telling you that, the property you bought for 1 crore is worth 97 lakhs today. Or someone knocking on the door every day, okay, today I'm offering you 90 lakhs. Yesterday I offered you 95. Abhi lena hai to le lo. So because the fact that you don't have that market there for you, that in fact just forces you to stay long. And that's why it kind of reinforces that belief कि बस पैसा real estate में बनता है,
Yeah.
right? It's not about the fact that you made money in real estate, not because the returns are good, You made money in real estate because your investment period has been very low. That money you'll make in fixed deposit also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just that you can't sell it.
Yeah.
Correct. I completely agree. But yes, I mean, it can be made if I think if you follow the same discipline in other asset classes, also the same thing can happen.
Yeah, but it's very tough to enforce in equity.
I agree. So Siddhi's got another question.
Yeah.
Siddhi Dubey is saying ki Siddhi's question is nothing but a salaried person's dream. Tax saving strategies to maximize returns.
So it all depends on where you are investing. So, for equity, I can tell you very quickly, if you're, let's say, investing in equity mutual funds, you invest for more than a year and then you harvest your tax. So you're not required to pay capital gains tax on up to 1 lakh a year. So if you've invested 1 lakh and that has become 2 lakhs in a year's time, you can redeem that entire 2 lakhs and not have to pay any long-term capital gains tax on it because your 1 lakh has gained by another 1 lakh. So that 1 lakh capital gains is exempt. So every year, if you just prune your portfolio and take out that 1 lakh, that is one way to save some tax. Long-term capital gains tax anyway is only 11.22, 10 plus surcharge. So that tax is, and this is on the gain. So this is also, not very high because everything else in India in terms of taxes is, quite expensive, quite pricey. So long-term capital gains is one of the least tax numbers. So that is one. The second way is if you're married, then you can split your investments with your spouse because then your spouse and you both get that benefit. So that's the other way to change. In fact, in the budget, one of the proposals made by AMFI is to increase this limit from 1 to 2 lakhs. So let's see, fingers crossed if that happens. So these are a couple of ways that you can increase your tax savings. Otherwise, when it comes to investing in Section 80C, taking your Mediclaim, I'm assuming that's not really the intention of your question. But if it is, then you can save your income tax through that, probably invest in NPS as well. So those are ways that you can save your income tax outgo as well. But when you're investing, then try to not churn your portfolio too much, just enough, one, to tax harvest. And second is to make sure that your investments are in good quality funds or good quality, investments.
Isn't it a very normal? I mean, a lot of people feel this. My interactions have been with few people, and they've said that आप टैक्स सेविंग को अलग रखो और इन्वेस्टमेंट्स को अलग रखो because वो टैक्स सेविंग वाला पैसा is not going to grow at a certain rate and this is not going to grow. For a normal salaried person, who's going through 20-30% of money going away, some of us are, also in surcharge. तो इतना पैसा चले जाता है आफ्टर दैट इट्स वेरी हार्ड टू बिलीव कि उसमें जो टैक्स सेविंग वाला है उसमें पैसा कम कमाने मिलेगा
नहीं सो वैसा नहीं है actually if you invest in an ELSS which is a equity linked savings scheme which is essentially a equity mutual fund, some ELSS are able to deliver better than normal equity mutual funds because the fund manager knows that this money is here for 3 years, so he can deploy more of the money. He doesn't have to leave more in cash, right? Which is what most open-ended fund managers have to do. They have to leave a little bit more in cash. So that is one way. The second is obviously he can take a longer term view. He's not, let's say, so much perturbed by the month on month or the day on day NAV performance. He's looking to generate, performance over a longer period of time. So I see that ELSS schemes also do well when it comes to, let's say, investing in fixed income instruments, which are there for tax savings. Then obviously you'll get fixed income in return. So if you compare like to like, I don't see any reason why you should treat your tax saving investments any different in terms of classification or evaluation than the other instruments where you're not, saving tax.
I think that's a huge relief. You're not jumping from 12% to 8% straight away. It's a huge relief. ELSs, I think it's a very fair point, Siddhi, when a fund, so when Gautam sir has worked with DSP with a fund manager called Mr. Vineet Sabharwal very, very closely. He sat with how the fund managers think. And this is where he's brought a beautiful point out. If you are going in a very locked in scheme of a mutual fund, you may feel कि 3 साल तक पैसा lock हो जाएगा, ये होगा, वो होगा. But he's able to actually deploy that money better and he's able to generate a good return on that. And ELSs, like, sir, they've done very well over the last many years. And it's exactly one of the reasons. I think you brought it out very well. It's very beautifully, I hope lot of our listeners will have that clarity solved today कि हाँ चलो we are at peace, पैसा बनेगा इसमें भी.
Actually, the one way to look at that is to answer the question by saying, look at asset classes, don't look at investments. And I think that's the first thing that we need to tell ourselves, that when we are looking at investments, bhai kahan pe dalun, kaun si scheme mein dalun, it's about which asset class we want to take exposure. And when you have an understanding, okay, equity, debt, real estate, gold, these are my key options. What do I select from this and how much money do I put? I think that's really the key decision that most of us need to make. Then you can just talk to any advisor or a distributor and he'll tell you, okay, within this asset class, these are your, currently selected schemes by research. Because that is another area of, scheme selection and the kind of effort that goes into that. And most investors can't do that. They don't have the information. Forget about the ability.
Yeah, I think we'll get to that by the end because there are so many questions coming in.
Yeah.
The next question is so interesting. I think I just wrote to Rashi on the chat as well. This question deserves a chocolate. I mean, it's the question of the day.
Oh, wow.
Gautam sir, how can we juggle saving for short-term goals like vacation while also securing the long-term financial stability? 10 crore भी आप stable कर दो और यहाँ पे हमारा trips भी करके दे दो.
Fantastic. You're right. It's an excellent question. It's all about balance. It's all about finding how much you are willing to die today to live tomorrow, or vice versa. तुम्हें कितना, how much hashtag YOLO do you want in your life today, right? So really, it's a very good question. And what one can do is work backwards. So if you know you've got, let's say, 10 lakhs, right? And you can save 50,000 rupees a month, then you know through just a simple Excel calculation that you will take 20 years to reach 10 crores, right? Now, if you're at a stage where you can save 50,000 and live your life comfortably, great. But if you are not and you say, I can't save 50, I can save 20, because that 30 will go into the additional savings that I will use every 2 or 3 years for a Europe trip, right? If that is the view, then you know that, okay, I've got 10 lakhs, I'm putting in 20,000. Instead of 20 years, I'll take 27, 28 years to reach, right? And that is something that then you know. And the point is that people don't think like this. People don't talk to their partners also like this. And if you have that conversation and if you do that math, then it becomes simple. That's really the problem you're trying to address. How much can I save for the future to reach that goal? And even if you can't reach 10, you may say, okay, boss, 5 bhi pahunch gaya kafi, right? So even if with that, you can set your sights a little bit lower and do that as well, depending on your current situation and how much. Most people problem क्या होता है कि वो बोलते हैं month खत्म हो गया, पैसा बचा नहीं, तुम पता नहीं 10-10 करोड़ का बात कर रहे हो, यहाँ पे पैसा नहीं बचा. So if you're in that stage, then the conversation is very different. Then the conversation is about, first figuring out your expenses and moving from income minus expenses is equal to savings. Moving from there to income minus savings is equal to expenses, right? So that is a very different conversation.
I agree. I think Siddhi, sorry, Rashi, you've got a good glimpse of how to do it. If you have any other questions, please post it. The next is from Sham. Sham is asking I think he's trying to understand that milestone or that curve where, what are the signs that he might need to adjust their financial plan or investment strategies? I mean, what are those signs कि यार ये तो अभी चल नहीं रहा है?
Most people, the mistake they make is they look at their portfolio and see whether the fund has delivered in their portfolio. That is a point-to-point return assessment. That is not the right. So the fund, when you talk to someone who's in fund research or who's on the distribution side, they will tell you whether this fund is expected to continue to do well or not. And that's really the only question you need to answer before deciding whether you should change your portfolio, whether you should make changes in that or not. So there are a lot of customers, clients of mine who say, "Yaar, ye red दिखता है portfolio में, I don't like seeing red, इसको हटा." Right? Now that red is there because you invested at time when the market was high. Now all the other investments in your portfolio you invested when the market was low, and they are in, let's say, average funds who are basically matching the benchmark. And here you've invested in the above average fund which is beating the benchmark, but you invested at market high and it's showing in red. So you want to get out of it. So that's really not the way. What you need is, if you're going into, let's say, actively managed funds, then you want something that consistently beats the benchmark. If you're buying a piece of property, if you're buying an apartment, let's say you're buying something in Bombay, you want to buy an apartment where after 5 years or 10 years, the return that you've got on the amount invested is higher than what you would have done in any other part of Bombay, right? That's really what you're looking for. It's not about how much return that place is already given to the previous investor, previous owner. It's about how much are you going to make. So really always look at your investments with question being asked, is this scheme or investment expected to give me benchmark beating returns going forward? And what are the things that could impact the fund not giving? So maybe the fund manager is changed. Maybe there is some issue with the company. Maybe the current portfolio is positioned extremely in variance with the market. So, that could mean a very high risk strategy. So there are other factors also that we look at. And, you're probably better off talking to a distributor, to an advisor on, these scheme level decisions. So scheme level decisions, I would say mostly leave it to a professional, but it's the asset allocation decision that you need to take. So how much money to invest and for how long? Those are the two questions you need to figure out as investors. And then obviously get a good advice.
I think that's brilliant. You really don't need to worry about, I mean, in terms of, what the fund is doing. You need to ask the person who is responsible for that. It's something that most of us don't do it. We enter, I think you also beautifully pointed out the fact that on the near the top of the market, we want to enter in a very above average return sort of a fund, and then when that doesn't perform, we are little, we get a little red, and then we just want to get out of it. I think I very beautifully covered.
And वही होता है ना with many कि मेरे investments में ही market down था, दूसरे के investments में हमेशा. So if you follow a strategy of looking at, okay, I know fund selection, I will look at top performers of the last 1 year, 3 years, and I will put in the top 3 funds. And then you're wondering, अरे यार मेरा पैसा नहीं बना, because you don't even know what you don't know. Forget about knowing that this is a detailed, this is a science in itself, but I want to select this way. Most people don't know what they don't know, and that's why they end up doing this.
Fully agree. I mean, I completely agree. Okay, we'll just switch over to the next question for now. Yeah. You can go on and on, but so Meera Chavan is asking about emergency fund. So kitna rakhna chahiye and what it should cover.
Yeah. So emergency fund, see what are the different emergencies one can think of, right? The key emergency one can think of is that literally you're being rushed into the emergency room, right? That's the key emergency. And the hospital is saying, okay, to operate on you, we need 5 lakh, right? And you got medical insurance, but somehow there is some technical issue. There is some sign which is not clear. They are asking for some document which is not there. You're looking for the policy, some paperwork which is going to delay that, right? So that's really that real emergency for which you need some money handy. And some of us have credit cards that can work to some extent the limit, but you also need some additional money. So I would say that is the first emergency that you need to be ready for in terms of liquidity, which is easily accessible. The second is obviously to do with, I would say, not so urgent emergencies, which is like, let's say, a job loss situation where suddenly you find yourself jobless, you don't have income for the next 3 to 5 months because you're looking for a job and you got your EMIs going on, right? So those are the things that you need to look at. Everyone has their own definition of emergencies and quantum, but typically the thumb rule is 6 times your monthly income. Just keep that aside, always have it ready, accessible.
Absolutely. I think the next question is very interesting. I mean, I was just thinking about it, how to put it across, but I think Anand is asking a very brilliant question. बहुत depth है. We might have just asked straight away, but the depth is that how can one stay motivated, okay, during the financial ups and downs of the journey to 10 crores? I think it's a question that really requires a lot of introspection on Anand's side also, and
it's very tough. That's the question actually, and that's the question that most people are not able to answer. It's very tough to stay motivated, especially with social media, and you see people living a baller life on Insta. And then you're thinking, boss, मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ यहाँ पे, right? मैं अभी भी ट्रेन में घूम रहा हूँ. I'm still sacrificing my today for my future. So one, it is very tough. Second, you have to think of hacks. So one of the key hacks, I can tell you, my father does this, is that he doesn't look at his portfolio when the market goes down. He only looks at his portfolio. He's all equity, by the way. He was all fixed deposit till finally he chose to listen to me because you घर पे कोई तुम्हारी बात नहीं सुनता ना. You may be a you may be a hero outside in the world, but so finally in about 2016, 2017, my parents gave in and they said, okay, we'll move all our money from fixed deposit to the market. But yes, so they stay motivated by looking at their portfolio only when it goes up, right? And I try to avoid looking at my own portfolio when the market is down because it does put me in a bad. I mean, I live and breathe this thing every day, right? This is my job. I do this for a living. But you can't underestimate negative influence, the negativity that you will experience when the market corrects, when the news flow is terrible, when you've not made money for 6 years. And this has happened with my clients. A lot of people invested money, their portfolio value was 50 lakhs in 2008 till 2013, that 50 lakhs had become 52 lakhs. And they're saying, boss, तुम इतना long term करते हो, मतलब what do you mean long term? और 6 साल हो गया और कितना long term करें? So those are phases, and the same has happened in real estate also in Bombay. People who've invested in 2011, 12, they've not really made money till 2018, 19. So for the longest time they didn't make any money. So you have these periods of underperformance in different asset classes and where you don't make any money, and it is very very tough to stay motivated. So the only thing I can say is trick your mind into thinking of it like a sale. So I always tell myself the example. There are two examples which you can probably think of. One is when you go to a mall and you see something being sold at full price and you buy it, and then the next day you come see it for sale, and then you say, "Arey, abhi sale pe abhi nahi kharidunga." So when 2008 happened, people were not buying, people were selling left, right, and center. When that was the time to buy. So you have to think of these assets as you will have these periods of sales going on, discounts going on, and that's when you need to buy. And so you just keep hoping, and that becomes your motivation. ठीक है, ये market अगर गिरेगा भी ना, तो I'm saving up money to buy more. The other way to motivate yourself is very, very simple example is I ask myself, will people eat more pizza? So, or biryani, whatever works, right? So Domino's is owned by Jubilant Foodworks. This is not an advertisement for Domino's. I actually hate Domino's, but it's owned by Jubilant Foodworks, and it is selling pizza for cheap to the masses, and gradually more and more people in smaller towns are changing their diet and wanting to have pizza. So when I meet school children from, let's say, class B, class C towns, they are looking forward to having pizza parties, right, or going to a Domino's. For them, it's an aspiration, and that is something that is just going to become more and more common, which means that more and more people are going to consume pizza. So ठीक है, market down है, ठीक है, stock down है, ठीक है, portfolio down है, but लोग pizza तो खाएंगे. So that's my way of kind of reassuring myself, saying कि वो हो जाएगा वापस, it'll come back. And those are the only ways these things work, because it's easier said than done, really. When the market goes down and the news flow is terrible, then it feels, and COVID is a perfect example for that. When it felt like the world was literally going to end and the market went down 40% in 2 weeks, we were talking to our clients every day, telling them don't do anything. We were setting up calls with top fund managers of the industry who were saying, "Bhai, abhi kharido, isse sasta nahi milega." And in hindsight, obviously, we came across as very, very smart to our clients. But who knows? We would have been hit by a strain which was stronger than the original virus. It would have become even worse. So it is tough to stay motivated, and that is why it is important to always follow asset allocation. So even if you know the market is in a multi-year bull cycle, you are convinced about the data, everyone is telling you कि बॉस तुम बीवी का शादी का गहना बेच के, घर बेच के, पूरा पैसा मार्केट में डाल दो, लोन लेके मार्केट में डाल दो, still you should have 20-30% in debt. So currently I have 30% in debt and 70% in equity, and I've had it for the longest time. And it's just that, and that's the you should be okay with leaving 4-5% return on the table if you have to, but that is why you keep that, because that portfolio becomes extremely important when equity asset class is not working or real estate asset class is not working. And that is, and you look like a fool for 5 years because you've not put all your money in one basket. But then when that black swan event happens, that's when you are able to use that money and buy for cheap. And that's really what asset allocation, that's the part. And that's what's important as investors that you must.
Absolutely. I think asset allocation all the way. You've already answered the next question that is coming from Jenny, is that common pitfalls that hinders wealth accumulation. And how can they be avoided? I think one of the most common pitfall is having all the eggs in one basket, and when that basket crashes, you don't know what to do. I think asset allocation is a beautiful way to move forward.
Yeah, just to add there, when that basket crashes, the ideal thing is to not do anything. But in that situation, it is almost near impossible to not do anything. You end up taking action. And that's the action is where you damage your portfolio. If you just leave equity alone, it'll go down, it'll come back up. It has given 15-16% return for the last 40 years, and it's seen all the scams, all the wars, everything they had. It's gone down, but still it's given that kind of return. So even it's very tough to not do anything. That's really the challenge.
Completely agree with it. I think Sakshi's questions we've covered. If you want to talk about a little more, is she's just asking when it's time to take a fresh look at our financial goals and make adjustments.
Yeah. So put a process in place, review this once a year, right? Because you also evolve, your aspirations evolve, your stage in life changes, not just the market external changes, but your internal changes, So that's really important. So you'll move from a single person to married couple with child, to empty nester, to retired. So you'll probably move through these different life stages, and you'll have different requirements and aspirations. So set this process up. It's a 30-40 year journey. Set it up once a year, review your plans, see whether those have changed. 3 years back, my plans, my aspirations were different from what they are today. I remember them, so I can tell you that. And that happens. That is very common. So just set that up for once a year. As far as scheme selection, investments are concerned, set that up for once in every 3 months. Depending on how active, if you're investing in direct stocks, then you probably have to review it much more actively. If you've essentially delegated that work to someone else, or if you're all real estate, then you probably don't have to review your portfolio that. You won't have data to review your portfolio.
Yeah. Agreed. Lavanya is asking a question that all of us go through it. How do you communicate your goals and plans with family, when it comes to finances?
Very good question. We've been taught growing up not to talk about religion and money. And that's really a problem. We need to be able to converse comfortably with our loved ones around money. I have this conversation with my mother so often because she wants me to buy a house. She's like, "Beta, tumhara ghar nahi hai." For her, it's like this massive thing void that's missing, and I'm all too happy staying on rent. I'm clearly on the rent side when it comes to rent versus buy. But the point is that you should be comfortable. You should be able to talk, and more importantly, you should be able to celebrate wins as far as personal savings goals are concerned, milestones are concerned. That is something that we need to teach ourselves to do. Numerous studies show that we feel twice the amount of pain on losing money than we feel the amount of pleasure on making money. So when your portfolio goes up by 10%, you feel happy. But when the portfolio goes down by 10%, you feel twice as unhappy. So really, we need to hack ourselves into celebrating those victories, those milestones that you achieve. So for example, a colleague of mine, who on my insistence, I literally like stood on his head. He just started working. I said, Abhi SIP, Abhi start. Abhi, these are the schemes put start. And he started with a 2,000 rupee a month sip, then he moved to 5,000 and then to 8. And within a year, he's reached 1 lakh. So we all just had an ice cream party. I said, boss, Kash, mere paas koi aisa hota when I was 23, 24 telling me this. Because I was busy trying to figure out where do I spend this new salary that I have, how to spend all of this money. So you need to learn how to have that conversation and celebrate those personal savings and investment milestones that you achieve.
That's a wonderful answer. I think with that, we've just taken the last question for the day. So this is from Aisha. What role does risk tolerance play in determining one's investment strategy?
Very, very tough question to answer. Okay. So let's just take two extremes. One is you are completely risk averse. You can't deal with any negative return in your portfolio. The question you have to ask yourself is, why are you completely risk averse? Why can't you deal with even 10%? Is it because of lack of experience, lack of knowledge, or you have experience and knowledge and after that you're still risk averse? So really the assessment of risk tolerance is currently not done correctly by most in the industry, because what I find is many people are risk averse because they don't know. They have no knowledge or they have no experience of what risk taking looks like, feels, right? So let's say you are risk averse for whatever reason, whether it's misdiagnosed risk aversion or genuine risk aversion, which means that you can earn only at 6-7% a year. Your portfolio will grow at 6-7%, which means what? You have to save more for longer because you cannot generate higher return consistently in your investments, and you have to reach the same goal as other people who are taking that risk. You have to save more for longer. That's the simple answer. But keep in mind that inflation is also compounding. So the Makalu Tikki burger has grown by 12% a year CAGR for the last 5 years in price. So if you had only 100 rupees to your name and you said, okay, today I can buy two Makalu Tikki burgers, this is way back 5 years back, and instead of that, you put it in fixed deposit, after 5 years, you couldn't be able to afford those two Mekalu tickets, right? So in today's day and age, I don't see being risk averse as an option unless you're making good money. I see it as a plan to fail. Most people, I try to talk them into at least taking 10-20% exposure, even if they are risk averse, into asset classes where there is no principal protection, like equity, because they need that to be able to keep pace just with inflation. Now we take the other example of someone who's extremely aggressive. There, the problem is different. There, the problem is that we need to continuously remind the investor of asset allocation, reining it in, finding a balanced approach, reminding him of times when, because people think, okay, if I just because risk and return are correlated, doesn't mean that if you take higher risk, you're definitely going to get higher return. So there are people who say, boss, I can take as much risk as FNO mein kar dunga, right? But then they lose money in FNO. So there was a friend of mine, he came to me, he said, yaar, mera paisa bana de, tu, you're with Sher Khan, I'll give you 5 lakhs, mera double kar de. ठीक है. So I said, देख, he was like कि कुछ भी risk चलेगा. So I said, मैं अभी casino में जाके I'll bet it all on red on the roulette table, and वहां पे double हुआ तो बन गया, अगर double नहीं हुआ तो I'll come back, चलेगा वो. So we have to kind of show them those extreme examples and contextualize those investments. So if someone has 5 lakhs and they want to play aggressive on it, it is in the larger context of their overall wealth. Then you can do it. If you have 1 crore and you're doing something with 10 lakhs, you want to put it in venture capital, angel seed funding, angel funding. If you're going into that, that's okay. You can still do that because it's a small portion. It's a tactical allocation. You can do that. So with most clients, we again tell them about asset allocation, remind them that you can get more higher risk, you can get higher return with higher risk, but that risk is sooner or later going to come and show in your portfolio. When that risk shows in your portfolio, what are you going to do? Are you going to change your risk profile? Because that is also what happens. There are a lot of us who say, abhi market tezi mein hai. Risk is most present when it's least felt. Abhi market tezi mein hai. Everyone is thinking कि अभी तो 30% तो ऐसे आ जाए. Now when the market falls, then suddenly everyone becomes conservative, right? So the point is, if you're truly aggressive, you still need to be reined in, and someone who's seen the markets to tell you, ki boss, hold your horses, focus on asset allocation, keep some money on the side.
With that, thank you so much, Gautam. So I think there's nuggets and nuggets and nuggets of wisdom, in this today's podcast. I think one of the best podcasts, I've had the opportunity to host.
Thank you so much.
Incredibly, it was diverse. You went from one subject to another. I think in the end, I remember somebody telling me that in the bull run, investors become fund managers, and in the bear run, they become analysts. So I think it's very beautiful you brought that out. Thank you so much for being on today's show. We'll definitely have a part two because the questions just keep rolling in, and
Yeah, happy to.
we run out of time. I think next time we'll do it for a 2-hour session proper.
Yeah, sure. I'll have a cup of tea ready then.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye.